The arrow hit not only the shell of the ball, but also the bandit himself, putting a fat cross on his life. The last surviving member of the gang realized that he could not win unless he escaped. He was ready to do anything to get out of here and not become the next victim of the invisible fighter from the criminal bureau. But Logan noticed his attempt to escape and put his hand on the roots, activating the next ability. The gang leader, with a fighting strength of 90 units, tried to escape and remain unpunished. But Logan could not allow that. He went to where the boy was, and Logan realized with horror that the bandit was planning something terrible. Logan was right, because realizing that he could no longer survive, the bandit swung his axe towards the boy, wanting to take one more life with him before he died. The boy closed his eyes in fear, preparing for death, because he understood that kind words would not work on these cruel people. But at some point he realized that the axe had not fallen on his head and, sobbing, he opened one eye. To his surprise, right in front of him stood a strange guy who took the blow of the axe on himself. But for some reason, he did not even die after such a monstrous blow. The blow hit Logan right in the chest, and overcoming the unbearable pain, he opened his eyes and saw drops of blood falling from him onto the floor. Only a madman who was ready to risk his life for the sake of people he didn't know could do something like this. From the guy's look, one could only guess how hard it was for him to endure hellish pain. But he simply had no other choice. But now, he was ready to take full revenge and created a sharp magical spear in his hand to finish off the last of this gang of thugs. The blow landed right in the chest, and like everything else in life, he survived thanks to his willpower. This is exactly what the gang leader always lacked, for which he paid with his life when a blade pierced his chest. Before his death, the bandit realized that he was not dealing with an ordinary person, and loudly shouted that Logan was a real monster. Having done the main thing and saved the boy's life, Logan staggered, barely keeping himself from losing consciousness. Collapsing to the floor, he replied that he had never been immortal, but had always been an ordinary student at a magic academy. However, it is unlikely that the student was capable of such a thing, and no one except the monster would have survived a direct hit to the chest with an axe. The boy immediately thanked his savior and said that he would ask his father to pay him as much money as Logan wanted. But it was at this moment that a man who had set all this up suddenly emerged from the depths of the abandoned factory. He loudly applauded Logan for completing the mission, and said that even the strongest master of the academy could not compare to him. Logan knew this young guy very well, who had given him tasks many times before, and had probably come to ask for the next mission. He was not mistaken. But this time Charlie ordered the murder of one stupid student, promising 10 million in cash for it. To Charlie's surprise, Logan refused the assignment for the first time, realizing that it was about a student who had recently won a competition. Charlie did not give up, and said that he was ready to accept any conditions, even if it meant selling the entire business. Besides, he had something that could interest Logan even more than money, and he could add this artifact to those 10 million. It turned out that Charlie knew that Logan's martial arts club had been desperately raising money for a life-extending elixir in recent years. And even though the dying gang member realized that Charlie had set him up, Logan didn't care about that right now. After some thought, Logan replied that only 5 people could obtain this sacred artifact, and it was unclear why Charlie wanted it. The guy didn't want to reveal all the secrets, and only replied that he had information received from his father. But who, if not Logan, knew that after Henry's murder, all suspicion would fall on him, and this crime would be considered the most serious. Charlie was prepared for this too, and stated that in the eyes of people this guy would be a sinner who deserved death. It turned out that he had planned to first discredit Henry's name, drag it through the mud, and then finish him off. Of course, Henry himself knew nothing about this yet, and he celebrated his recent victory with his family. His adoptive father did not expect that his son would be so lucky and take 10th place in the ranking of students at the academy. As a rule, he did not allow himself to drink much, but for such an event it was worth having a little more than usual. But all this time, Linda could not understand how her boyfriend managed to become a powerful fighter so quickly. In response, he said that he accidentally received a couple of useful tips from a martial arts expert, and after that, everything went like clockwork. But when he said that his teacher was an alchemist, it caused a strong reaction, and his parents could not believe it. After all, they knew that an alchemist was the most honorable and rare profession among the immortals in the entire country. Only now, Sophia learned something that her boyfriend had kept silent about for a long time, and for some reason decided to say about it in front of his parents. It was clear to the immortal spirit, who had already studied his ward, that the guy had simply led everyone away from the truth with the phrase about the alchemist. With a smile, the father asked Henry not to forget about little Sophia when he became the most famous alchemist in the city. Moreover, he suddenly handed the young men a martial arts book that he had been saving for this day for a long time. believing that they were now worthy of studying it. Watching how the young people supported each other in everything, Dorothea became more and more happy and had no doubt that everything would be fine for them. By the way, the book really had a lot of useful information, and it was worth reading it to understand the ancient techniques of martial arts. However, the manuscripts given by her father belonged to a friend of the immortal spirit, and this girl was the very first immortal in the world. But then the immortal spirit said darkly that that girl had been killed by a witch clan many years ago, and he still remembered it. Only now did Henry realize that on the first day when the immortal spirit appeared before him in the Hall of Heroic Souls, it was precisely about her. But after a pause, the spirit, without even turning to Henry, asked him for one important favor. And then he announced that they must defeat the clan led by Charlie's family, because protecting humanity was the goal of the murdered friend. Meanwhile, evening fell over the city, and the lights in the windows of the house began to gradually go out one after another. After turning off the light and trying to fall asleep, Henry tossed and turned for a long time, because he was again tormented by nightmares. His face was covered in sweat, and in his sleep he muttered strange words about a red cloud, clearly seeing something terrible. He dreamed of the front entrance to an ancient temple, and he seemed to feel magical threads that stretched across the entire space. Heading in the direction the magic thread led, he entered the temple and saw the immortal spirit bending over the body of a dying girl. It was the same spirit's friend who failed to defeat the 12 ancient witches, because they attacked her simultaneously from behind the garden. Before she died, she said that one Hall of Souls would not be enough to protect people, so she asked for one favor. Then a sacred blade appeared in her hand, and before her soul left the world of the living, she asked to seal it in this artifact and take it with her. But the worst thing was that for this, he would have to kill his best friend, because otherwise it would be impossible to transfer her soul into this sacred artifact. It was very difficult, but all his life, he had been like a brother to the girl, and she could only entrust such a task to him. Tears were streaming from his eyes, but after a short pause, he said that he promised her he would do it for her sake. After her death, she promised to reincarnate into people from generation to generation and follow the master of the Hall of Souls. The sword was needed to protect humanity, because in a fight with monsters, magic alone was not enough, and a more formidable weapon was needed. At that moment, while Henry was tossing and turning in bed, the spirit was nearby, realizing that only through dreams could the guy regain his memories. Then, waking up, he screamed so loudly that the lights in the house immediately came on, and it became clear that he had woken up all the neighbors. Even the evil immortal spirit was frightened by the loud scream of his ward. But it was then that the boy felt that he should be in Sophia's room now. It's unclear how he knew this, but within seconds he was running towards her room to be near her. Already on the way to her bedroom, he heard a woman scream from afar and, opening the door, asked what had happened to her. It turned out that the girl had used some new magic and, leaning her hand on the wall, fell to the floor, unable to stay on her feet. She explained with difficulty that a new creature had entered into symbiosis with her, and that with every cell of her body she felt unity with it. Moreover, she did not have time to come to her senses before she reached a new level of spiritual development, and this was impossible without the help of the spirit. Surprisingly, approximately the same thing had recently happened to Henry himself, and the immortal spirit understood her words better than anyone else. Unable to hold back his tears, he realized that he saw in front of him not only Sophia, but also his sister, who had taken up residence in the body of this girl. The next morning, there was supposed to be a meeting at the academy between Agatha and Charlie, who had long wanted to talk to her. The girl was clearly not happy to see him, but she could not refuse the young gentleman, who had too much influence in the city. From afar, Charlie warned her that this time Agatha's help would be needed to deal with Henry. He then whispered in her ear what exactly she had to do, and it would be the main part of their big plan. He was ready to pay her 200,000 so that the girl could seduce this student, believing that Agatha did not need to be taught all the intricacies of this business. Besides, the guy knew that she was always in need of money, so by selling her body, she would be able to forget about this problem for a while. He was right that Agatha was from a poor family, but this time she decided to refuse, and not to blacken her name even more with such dirty deeds. But it seems she didn't understand what he meant, because it wasn't a request at all, but a demand. To be more convincing, he hit the girl in the face, hoping that this would make her more accommodating. But she continued to say that she would not agree to carry out this order, even if the guy had to beat her half to death. Then, grabbing her by the hair, Charlie reminded her of Agatha's words about how she was still innocent and therefore could be excellent bait for this freshman. But suddenly, after this, he began to slowly unbutton his pants, hoping that no one would come to the aid of this girl and prevent him from doing this dirty deed. However, he was mistaken, because the next second the door suddenly opened, and the silhouette of teacher Michelle appeared in the doorway. Realizing he had been caught red-handed, Charlie quickly buttoned his pants and said the girl had simply fallen and he wanted to help her. Of course, she didn't believe a single word this scoundrel said. And if Agatha had said that she was being mocked, she was ready to support her. She understood that this brat's family was influential and had great importance in the city. But Michelle herself was not a weak girl either. But after a short pause, Agatha suddenly said that she was okay and that she had indeed fallen by accident. Realizing that the problem was over, Charlie hurried out of the room into the hallway, wishing everyone a good day and waving to the teacher. However, Michelle did not agree that the conversation was over and asked the guy to wait another minute. And the next moment, she hit him in the face with her hand so hard that the guy flew back several meters, not expecting such a reaction. She broke his nose with a blow and Charlie was ready to lash out at her with the dirtiest words. But, having looked closely at the ominous aura that this teacher was emitting, I realized that it was better to remain silent. Realizing that Logan had become this bastard's henchman, Michelle called after him that she was disappointed in him. The guy admitted that he had his reasons, and although he was annoyed to hear this from Michelle, when both had left and the girls were alone, Agatha quietly thanked the teacher for her help. In response, she slowly lit a cigarette, saying that it was not difficult for her to do so, and told the student to go to class. She understood that an event was coming that was more terrible than any skirmishes with rich kids, because the monsters from the Witch Clan could interrupt the life of everyone in this city. Soon, Charlie and his accomplices were discussing their next move.